On March 10th, 2023, I had the honor and privilege of interviewing Gregg Oppenheimer, son of the late Jess Oppenheimer, creator of the sitcom I Love Lucy. Here is part one of our two-part interview. And when you met Lucy, your first meeting with Lucy was pretty iconic.
I wasn't yet 5. I was 4.5, and it's on the set of the Staten Island Ferry episode.
Oh, and, very good.
We met Vivian Vance and there were pictures taken with her, and then Lucy came out of her dressing room, and my dad introduced her to me, and she kneeled down so we'd be at the same eye level. And she said, "Where'd you get those big brown eyes?" I said, "They came with the face." Which I think was the first joke I ever made.
Yeah.
And she practically fell over laughing.
And you were an instant legend if you made Lucy laugh. So, kudos to you. Now, do you have any personal memories of the other cast members, including Lucy, because you were so young? Was Lucy's hair really that red?
I do not have a vivid color memory of that moment, I'm afraid. I was a little young. I remember it happening, but I don't remember the color of her hair.
Yeah.
And it was amazing that she was famous for the color of her hair, and she was in a black and white show.
Yeah.
Which I still find amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
You couldn't see it.
Yeah. And I don't think it turned out the way she meant for it to either when she was turning it red.
Cindy Gilliroff was the guy who decided to give her red hair for Good Day Was a Lady.
Right.
And on coincidence, we ended up buying his house in 1961.
Wow.
So we were living in that house with the guy who turned Lucy's hair red.
And that's also where Lucy met Carl Freund, right? Who was the...
Yeah, Good Day Was a Lady. That's right. Carl Freund, the great cinematographer.
Yeah.
Such as Dracula and Camille and The Good Earth.
And so he was crucial in the I Love Lucy team as far as photographing it and lighting it and everything.
Absolutely. She called him Papa.
She called him Papa. Wow.
Mm-hmm. Everybody called him Papa.
And then, because that was one of the questions I was going to ask you. Did your father was obviously a very, very smart man. He had an IQ of 141. He invented on his own, basically, or with some of the other people in the team, Carl Freund, Al Simon, Dan Kahn, the sitcom itself, really. The set up, the camera set up, the script structure, the live audience rerun, the laugh track, everything. Did he have any?
No laugh track.
He didn't invent the laugh track. Okay.
No, there was no laugh track on I Love Lucy.
Oh, I know that. But when they used the laugh track in the Lucy Desi Comedy Hour, did he not? Was he not involved with the invention of that?
No, because he wasn't there. He left before Lucy was a comedy hour.
Right.
But I didn't know they used a laugh track. I don't think they used a laugh track on Lucy was a comedy hour.
Oh, I thought they.
They actually, when the guy at CBS invented the laugh track, he needed a laugh library. It was a machine I used to sit there on other shows, and my dad did have a laugh track, and watch Charlie operate this machine. It was like watching a concert pianist playing a keyboard. Each key is a different laugh, but all the laughs that were recorded in the machine that he could summon up by pressing the different keys. Most of them were from I Love Lucy. That was their laugh library. And a lot of people get mixed up with that and think, well, okay, I Love Lucy used laugh tracks from this machine. No, it's the other way around. This machine used laugh track from I Love Lucy.
Well, I was thinking that, now I knew I Love Lucy was in front of an audience and all of Lucy's other shows, but that could have been, I read that in another book where someone said that the Lucy Desi Comedy Hour was done with a laugh track and sort of got that mixed up, as people do. in terms of, the feuds with Bill Frawley and Vivian Vance that are made out to be bigger than they were, or, such as in the film with Nicole Kidman. My wife and I were just talking. We saw an interview with her where she said, "Oh, I knew nothing about Lucy," and it's like, Lucy is a part of Americana. How do you not know much about her? And yet she knew very little about her, but she gets an Academy Award nomination. It doesn't make sense to me. But anyway, if any adaptation should win an award for what they do for Lucy, it should be your play, in my opinion, or your book.
Thank you.
Because your book is the only one about Lucy that I go back and reread. I have many Lucy books, and the only other one that I do that is Madeline Pugh Davis and Bob Carroll Jr.'s book. I thought that was really, I thought that was a great book as well. And they were the three of them were a dream team.
When Carl Reiner did the Dick Van Dyke Show, he based the setup with Rob Petrie and Buddy and Sally, the three writers on the Alan Brady Show, I guess was the show within a show. They based that on my dad and Bob Madeline. At least that's what he told me. I interviewed him for my elementary school newspaper, and because they were close friends of ours, and so he let me interview him. And that's what he said. Not the characters so much. I mean, Rob Petrie was based on Carl Reiner himself,
right?
When he had done your shows, but the whole setup with the head writer and the fact that he came in after the other two were there. They had a couple of episodes about that. It was based on
Bob and Madeline. Yeah, the greatest team in TV history for sure. Did you have many interactions or any interactions with Lucy as an adult or any of the cast members? Do you have any memories yourself of them?
When I was an adult?
Yes.
No, the last time that I saw Lucy in person was, I think I was 13. Mm-hmm. And where she did the Bob Hope comedy special, Lucy Bob Hope comedy special. It's called Mr. and Mrs., where they played interestingly. They played America's favorite TV couple who actually in real life hated each other.
Wow.
That was the premise of that. And my dad produced that. And I went down to see them shoot it. But after that, that was the last thing my dad did with Lucy too.
And I love.
He did a 1962 show with Danny Kaye. Called it was the Danny Kaye show, the first Danny Kaye show. A special with Lucy, which was a hilarious show.
Yes, I've seen the scene from the Chinese restaurant, I believe it is, from that.
Yeah.
But that's very interesting because we don't hear, the book stops with his exit of I Love Lucy. You don't hear much about your dad after Lucy. So what career turns did your dad have after Lucy?
Well, he went to NBC, mm-hmm. and he did a bunch of specials. And the thing about specials is most of them at that time were Philly musical specials, were live, and so they don't have a lot of lasting power in people's memory. Mm-hmm. 10, 15 years later, you don't remember some great musical variety special. Mm-hmm. But he did a show called the General Motors 50th Anniversary Special, which had all sorts of big stars on it. It was hosted by Kirk Douglas and Ernest Borgnine. It had everybody from Cheetah Rivera to you had Carol Burnett and Steve Lawrence in their first TV appearance together. Carol Burnett was just brand new at the time. She just made a big splash on the Jack Paar show. Anyway, but he was dad in the 50s. a show called Ford Star Time, which was again a live thing. Actually, that was videotape, but and then later he had a show called Angel, which if people go to my YouTube channel, they can watch a dozen episodes of it. It's a very good show, but unfortunately it was on opposite. It was a sitcom. It was shot at Desi Lou, and it used I Lucy crew, and Doris Singleton, who played Carolyn Appleby on I Lucy, was Angel's best friend. Annie Fargé played Angel. Marshall Thompson, who was the star of a show later called Daktari, played her husband. And it was hilarious, but you can see a dozen episodes on my YouTube channel. Great. And then he did later. He did a show with Glynis Johns, was from the Mary Poppins show, a movie, and he did a show with Debbie Reynolds, and he was producer and wrote some and directed some Get Smarts in the mid '60s. So, and then he did a show called Bob Hope Presents Chrysler Theater, which is an anthology show. Different, different story, different actors, and everything every week in the '60s. So he did a variety of things. He certainly stayed active, but he never had anything that came anywhere close to.
Did he work up until his death in 1988, or?
He really, no, he had a heart attack in '74, and he's pretty much retired at that point. He worked on some NBC's 50th anniversary special in the '70s, and then there was a follow-up to that. So he helped put that together. But he basically retired in the '70s.
Was he friendly with Lucy and Desi for the rest of his life? I know there was some friction between he and Desi when he left the show. So.
Yeah, he worked with Lucy in the '60s. They had a dispute in the '60s. It really wasn't a dispute with Lucy; it was a dispute with CBS, because when they did the Lucy show, they started recycling some of the old Lucy scripts and turning them into Lucy shows. And he had a contract that basically said he was supposed to get royalties if they used his stuff. And CBS said, no. It was totally unrelated. It was a totally different character, and these are totally different stories. And so he ended up suing them. They eventually settled and paid him a bunch of money because they thought he had a good case. But in order to, Desi Lou had sold to Paramount, and Paramount was being taken over by Gulf Western. And my dad's lawyer said, if you're going to bring a lawsuit, you have to name Lucille Ball Productions because they have an interest in the Lucy show. And my dad said, well, I don't want to sue Lucy. I have no dispute with Lucy. And the lawyer said, they're a necessary party. You'll get thrown out of court if you don't name them. So he named them and told Lucy he had no dispute with her, didn't want anything from her. But he had to include her in the suit. But she took it very personally, being sued. And so they didn't speak for a long time. But then Bart Andrews wrote a book called I Love Lucy book in the '70s.
Yes, I have that book. I think that's where I saw that maybe that's the book I saw where they said the Lucy Desi Comedy Hour used a laugh track. I'm not sure.
Well, if Bart said it, it's probably true. But my dad wrote the foreword to that. And Lucy very much liked what Dad said about her in the foreword, and they sort of made up after that.
And that one, okay. So then they were friendly then until he passed. From that point on.
Yeah, and she said some very nice things about him after he passed away.
Right.
And she passed away not long after he did.
Within months. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting because you look at the cover of your book, and it is Lucy and your father laughing over My Favorite Husband script. And his first meeting with Lucy was not, as you might say, as amicable as you might hope. He comes into the studio where this show is happening, and he sees the guy who's over the show having these prescription drugs lined up all in his office, and they say the biggest problem is Lucy. So at that point, most people would have turned and run, but he did not.
All his friends, all my dad's friends told him that don't go to work for Lucille Ball.
Right. And then, if you want to explain in a nutshell his first encounter with Lucy.
Well, his first encounter with Lucy was actually brilliant. I mean, they asked, Harry Ackerman called him and asked him if he would write a script for My Favorite Husband, because the people who wrote Ozzie and Harriet were writing it, and it started in the summer of 1948, and they had to go back to work on Ozzie and Harriet, and they were looking for writers to take over. Mm-hmm. And so Dad wrote a script, totally changed the character. Lucy was playing a socialite wife of the bank vice president. Yes. And it was a society show. They were more like Nick and Nora Charles within that, with the witty banter and everything. And then, the characters on Lucy. And the dad basically changed her into Lucy Ricardo. And she just went to town with that, and everybody loved it. Lucy loved it. And so they immediately asked Dad if he would take over and become head writer. And he accepted. And a week later, they asked him to take over from the producer-director. And take that on as well. And so my dad was producing and writing and directing the show. He was writing it with Don and Madeline, who were already there. They were CBS staff writers, very young, recent college graduates. And everything went fine for a few weeks until they had a script.
So it was not the first script that she read that she went ballistic on.
No, she loved it. It was wonderful for a couple of weeks, until they had a script that there was a problem on, and Lucy read it and was laughing like crazy. But when she came to the last line, when she was really weak, and then my dad realized they needed to rewrite that last line, she just went into a tirade and tore up the script and threw it on the floor. And swore a bit, and my dad walked out. He said, we deserve to be treated with a lot more respect than that. And so I can't say it's been fun, but at least it's over. And he left, and she sent Don Sharp running down the street after him, and saying, Lucy, she realized, and she admits that she was wrong. And wants to apologize. Please come back. And my dad came back, and they had no problems after that. Once he established that with her that it had to be a mutual respect. They got along famously. She really needed to rely on somebody. She needed to lean on somebody. She leaned on Desi, and she leaned on my dad.
And he realized, okay, this is how I need to treat you. I need to dominate you. She wanted to be dominated.
She wanted to just totally, turn over the reins and rely on somebody. That's what made her most comfortable. She knew what she was doing in terms of acting, but in terms of anything else, she needed somebody she could trust. And it's funny. If she didn't feel that way, she would tend to take over because she was insecure. And Billy Asher, Bill Asher directed more than 100 out of Lucy episodes. Right. And he later did the Bewitched program starring his wife, Montgomery. His first day on the set, everything seemed to be going okay, but every time he'd turn around, we'd take a break or something, and then we'd come back from the break, and everybody would do something different than what Billy had wanted them to do. And he finally realized that during the break, Lucy had been going around telling everybody the way she thought things ought to be played and done. Mm-hmm. And so he said, Lucy, if you want to direct the show, fine, but if you're going to pay me to do this, I have to be in charge of this. And she started crying and ran off. And all of a sudden there was nobody on the set. Because when there's a problem, nobody wants to be around.
Right.
And he's standing there alone, and he can't go back to his office. He didn't have an office yet. It's his first day. So he goes to the bathroom, in the men's room, and sits in the stall. And Desi comes looking for him. She goes, she'd been running off to Desi when she was crying.
Right.
And Desi said, "You're absolutely right. Stick to your guns." And from then on, he had no problem with her. The later director, Jimmy Kern, never really learned that lesson. And she walked all over him. Although the episodes came out fine, but
right.
He never really felt he could stand up to her. I think Jimmy Kern did like the grape stomping episodes. It was
right.
Great episodes, but
she ate him alive.
Yeah, and went to Billy Asher, took him to lunch once, and said, "I have a problem with Lucy. What do I do?" And Billy Asher said, "Look, it's like a dog smells fear. When you get to, first thing, get to the set, you tell her what to do. Tell her where to stand, tell her what to do, exactly how you go. Just lay down the law, and she'll respect you for that. If you're hesitant with her, she won't lean on you, and things will get out of hand. But Jimmy couldn't bring himself to do that. So he saw Billy a couple months later, and he said, "I solved my problem." And he said, "Oh, really? You did take my advice?" He said, "No, I bought myself a Cadillac."
With all that your father had created, as we've already discussed, I don't feel that he ever got the credit he deserved, still even today. Two questions. Did he have any conception of what a genius he was, and do you think he felt slighted at all?
He was a pretty modest guy. I mean, he wasn't really full of himself, so I don't know if he realized what a genius he was.
Do you realize what a genius he was?
Oh yeah, yeah. I think a lot of people do now, but yeah. He was the first showrunner. And now they call it a showrunner, a producer, writer, creator.
Yeah.
But at the time, it was controversial wearing the different hats, and in fact, he got in trouble with the Writers Guild. They took him for the NLRB, National Labor Relations Board, because they said, "No, you can't be represent the producers management." Now everybody realizes producer is not part of management.
Right.
Producers now just on TV is another name for the writers, but showrunner is one of the classic producers.
Mm.
But at the time, it's like, oh, you're in both camps. But he really sort of pioneered the job of showrunner, because he ran all the meetings and was in charge of everything on the show, and he was the head writer at the same time.
Right, he did it all. But you don't think he felt slighted in that the television world sort of owes everything to him?
I don't think he felt slighted. No. I mean, he had top billing on the show, writing and top and producing. But
he went out over a dispute with Desi.
He had a 5-year contract with them, and the reason he left in large part was he thought they should end the show because they were starting to recycle themes that they had done already.
Uh-huh.
Jealousy, money problems and stuff. And the show, he was worried that the show wasn't going to be, fresh enough for him. And right. He wanted there to be one show that would just retire as champion and not, jump the shark, as they say now. And as so many shows do. The following season, the other writer, Bob and Madeline, and he hired 2 more writers, Bob Schiller and Bob Weisskopf. They realized they needed to do something to have fresh ideas, and what they came up with was aging little Ricky by 2 years all of a sudden, and so he could actually be a character in the show, and there could be problems about motherhood. Lucy as mother.
And then we have Keith.
Yeah, Richard Keith, or Keith Thibodeau.
Thibodeau
is his real name. Yeah, who never got credit on the show. He never got a credit.
No, but he's a very talented guy, a very nice guy. I'm fortunate to call him a friend now. He was my very first podcast interview, and he's a terrific fella. Very talented guy, talented musician. And you were telling me that Desi Jr. learned the drums because of Keith. Is that what you said?
Probably, yeah, I think that's the case.
Yeah.
Yeah, Keith. Keith and I went to an Easter party at Lucy and Desi's home in Beverly Hills in 1956, and Keith was there. And both of us remember that party because there was a clown, and people didn't. Not everybody hired clowns for children's parties back then.
Right.
So we were both impressed by this clown. And when I mentioned it to Keith, this is 10 years ago, he said, "Oh, remember that clown?" He was impressed by it. But yeah, Lucy also in her backyard had a Ferris wheel and a merry-go-round. So it was a rather lavish party.
Yep.
But it was fun for us kids.
Insane. Yes. So, with the dispute when he left, was he on good terms with Desi, or?
Oh, he was on great terms with everybody at the time he left.
So
yeah, there were no hard feelings, and that's why they worked. She worked together. He worked with Lucy later with Danny Kaye and
right,
Hope.
Right. But Desi, did he and Desi stay in touch till Desi passed, or do you know?
Yeah. On and off. When Desi wrote his book, Dad was a bit miffed. That was
right.
in 75, because
76, yeah.
There was no character in his book. There was no Jess Oppenheimer, producer like Lucy, in Desi's book.
And there's something in your book about that he didn't get credit as a producer. He named himself as the sole producer, and that was it.
Yeah, so there was some friction there, and they weren't working together at that time.
Right.
Or anything.
Right. In terms of Vivian Vance and Bill Frawley, Lucy and Desi, everything in the world has been written about those two. We know so little about Vivian Vance and Bill Frawley, really. I read an article many, many years ago it was a San Francisco Chronicle article that a manuscript had been found that Vivian was writing her memoir, and they were looking for a publisher. Do you know anything about that? Is there any hope of that ever being published? Or?
I think it was. I don't remember what the name of the book was. I think somebody did publish that, or did a book largely based on it.
I know
there was a book called Meet the Merces,
right,
which has a lot of information in it. But I think after that, they did publish at least parts of that memoir, because I remember seeing it, but it was quite a while ago.
Yeah, there was one called The Other Side of Ethel Mertz, but this was going to be a book, sort of like The Love Lucy that was found years after her death. It was going to be something written by Vivian, and I'd always hoped to see that.